Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most brutal, controversial, and frankly forgotten battles of the Second World War, Peleliu. This was a fight that was supposed to be a cakewalk, over in a matter of days, but it became a living hell. I mean, just listen to that. 4 days. That was the confident official prediction from the commander of the 1st Marine Division for the American invasion of this tiny little island in September 1944. A quick, decisive strike. In and out. But yeah, 73, that's how many days the battle actually lasted. That 4-day estimate, it was off by more than 2 months. So the big question is, how on earth did a 4-day fight spiral into a nearly 3-month nightmare? Well, that's what we're going to unpack right now. The brutal miscalculation and the tragic, complicated legacy of the Battle of Peleliu. All right, so to really get our heads around this massive miscalculation, we've got to start with the original plan. I mean, why attack this tiny 6-square-mile island in the first place? The plan was called Operation Stalemate 2. On paper, it was pretty straightforward. Invade Peleliu, seize the Japanese airfield there, and, most importantly, protect General Douglas MacArthur's flank for his big, highly anticipated return to the Philippines. It was seen as just a stepping stone, a necessary and hopefully very quick job. Now, here's where things start to go sideways. American planners thought they knew what they were getting into. They expected a familiar fight, another island assault, same old playbook. But the Japanese had secretly and fundamentally changed the entire rulebook. And this right here is the absolute core of the American miscalculation. See, after getting hammered on other islands, the Japanese commanders made a radical pivot. They completely abandoned the suicidal beach defenses and the big banzai charges. Their new doctrine was a war of attrition, a brutal strategy called defense in depth, designed not to win, but to make the costs of victory so unbelievably high that the Americans would just lose the will to keep fighting. And here's exactly how they did it. Under a guy named Colonel Kunio Nakagawa, the Japanese turned the island's jagged coral ridges into a subterranean fortress. I'm talking a honeycomb of over 500 interconnected caves. These weren't just holes in the ground. They were fortified with steel doors, creating these deadly, interlocking fields of fire. This system let them attack from one spot, vanish, and then pop up somewhere else entirely. They were fighting an almost invisible enemy. So when the Marines of the 1st Division landed on September 15, 1944, they weren't just landing on an island. They were walking directly into this fortress. And the island's central ridges would soon earn a grimly appropriate name, Bloody Nose Ridge. And it wasn't just the enemy they were fighting. The environment itself was a weapon. The terrain was razor-sharp coral that just shredded uniforms and boots. The heat index soared past 115 degrees Fahrenheit, causing crippling heat exhaustion. Water was scarce and often contaminated with oil. And to make everything worse, the coral landscape just swallowed artillery shells, making the pre-invasion bombardment far less effective than anybody had planned for. You have to understand, this wasn't a battle of grand maneuvers across open country. This was intimate. It was vicious and just unrelenting. Victory was measured in feet, as American forces had to clear hundreds of these fortified caves one by one, using flamethrowers, explosives, and just brutal close-quarters assaults. This chilling account from a U.S. tank crewman, it just captures the carnage of the very first day. With all those Japanese guns hidden in the coral, the landing beaches weren't a beachhead, they were a perfect kill zone. And the terrifying part is, those new Japanese tactics, they worked. They worked exactly as intended, inflicting a horrific toll on the American forces, far beyond anything the planners had ever imagined. The cost of taking this tiny island was staggering. We're talking approximately 10,000 total U.S. casualties. That's a number that just shocked the American command. And look at the 1st Marine Division specifically. These were the legendary veterans of Guadalcanal who led the assault. They suffered a staggering 40% casualty rate. Over 6,500 men were killed or wounded. The division was so battered that it was effectively destroyed as a fighting force for months. And for the Japanese defenders, well, the battle was an act of national suicide. Out of a garrison of nearly 11,000 soldiers, 10,695 were killed. Their resistance was absolute. After months of this ferocious resistance, having exhausted his men and his resources, Colonel Nakagawa sent this final, almost poetic message. He then burned his regimental colors and performed ritual suicide.
So, in the aftermath, with the butcher's bill so terribly high, a really difficult and controversial question started to emerge about the whole point of the operation.
Yeah, was Peleliu even worth the price? The legacy of this battle is deeply debated, and honestly, the answer to this question really depends on your perspective.
So let's break down the debate. On one hand, you've got a lot of historians, and even Admiral Halsey at the time, arguing the battle was a tragic, unnecessary fight. The airfield, the whole reason for the invasion, turned out to be of little strategic value. But, on the other hand, the brutal fighting on Peleliu became a grim teacher. It was the first time Americans encountered Japan's new defense-in-depth strategy, and the bloody lessons learned clearing those caves would directly inform the planning for the even deadlier battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa.
So the battle exists in this tragic paradox, a strategically questionable fight that, nonetheless, may have saved lives in the long run by preparing U.S. forces for the horror that was still to come. For the men who survived, it was a defining, if often forgotten, ordeal. And that really brings us to the question that sits at the heart of Peleliu's tragic legacy. It stands as a testament to the incredible courage of those who fought there, but also as a sobering cautionary tale about the brutal calculus of war and the forgotten corners of hell it can create.